Floods in Upper Assam and parts of Nagaland are not just another natural disaster. They are a warning, and we need to ask a question we can no longer avoid. Why are we still treating climate change as a distant threat when it is already at our doorstep? I recently traveled through Hibahagor, Soraido, Nagini Mora and Mon in Nagaland. I saw flooded homes, destroyed crops, dead livestock and families who are now wondering how they are going to rebuild their lives all over again. But as the water rises, so does another debate. What is actually causing these floods to become so destructive in the first place? People are raising serious concerns about large-scale coal, sand and stone mining. They are asking whether changes to riverbeds and catchment areas are pushing more water downstream. And others are pointing to unprecedented rainfall and a rapidly changing climate. So these questions deserve to be investigated because we should not reduce a complex disaster to one single cause. Mining, deforestation, land use changes, river morphology, drainage systems, and extreme rainfall can interact with each other, and together they can make a flood far more destructive than anyone could ever imagine. But there is one fact that we cannot debate away. Our climate is changing. And our government documents have been warning us about this for years. In 2022, then Assam Minister Keshav Mahanta told the Assam Legislative Assembly that the state's average temperature could rise by up to 2.2 degrees Celsius by 2050. And that is too because of climate change. The Assam State Action Plan on climate change had already projected a significant increase in extreme rainfall. And some projections indicate that extreme rainfall could increase by up to 5 to 38%. And the updated projections are even more concerning. They point towards increases in extreme rainfall, more flood events, higher Brahmaputra stream flow, and substantially higher sediment loads. So these are not just WhatsApp forwards, or these are not just random claims that are being made on social media. These are the warnings which are contained in scientific assessments and government documents. So I have a very simple question. So if the government already has this data, why are we still responding only after people lose their homes, their crops, their livestock, and all their livelihoods? And why are we not preparing for the climate that our own reports say it's coming? And this isn't only an Assam issue. This is a Northeast India issue because the Brahmaputra and its tributaries don't care about our state boundaries. So what happens in the hills affects the plains, and what happens upstream affects communities downstream. The rivers of Assam, Nagaland, Arunachal Pradesh, Meghalaya, and the rest of the Northeast are part of one interconnected ecological system. So this cannot become an argument about the state versus state. It cannot simply become mining versus rainfall, and definitely not a ruling party versus opposition party debate. So the bigger question here is that are our governments actually preparing for a rapidly changing climate? Because look at the ground reality. We can see that in front of our eyes. Assam has experienced enormous forest and tree cover loss over the past 2 decades. Riverbank erosion has already consumed nearly 4.27 lakh hectares since 1950, which is roughly 7.4% of Assam's geographical area. And in 2019, floods submerged more than 1.6 lakh hectares of cropland and displaced millions of people. And in 2024 alone, Assam accounted for around 2.5 million of India's 5.4 million disaster-linked displacements. So, but behind every number is a human being, a family that lost its home, a farmer who has lost an entire year's harvest, a child whose school was submerged, a worker who lost their livelihood, and an elderly person who was forced to leave their village. So, and now once again, we are seeing the same images, the Dikho, the Disang, being completely submerged, and these villages completely underwater. So, agricultural land disappearing beneath floodwater, all different kinds of livestock being lost, roads and schools are being damaged, and people are asking, could we have been better prepared? I believe we owe them an honest answer. Because districts like Golaghat, Dibrugarh and Shivasagar are not new to these risks. Our own climate assessments have repeatedly identified districts across Assam as highly exposed to flooding, erosion and extreme rainfall and livelihood disruption. So the latest climate risk assessment places Assam in the very high climate risk category. Again, this isn't political rhetoric, it's data. It is completely data. And the projections for the coming decades should concern every policymaker. Rainfall patterns are expected to change, and extreme rainfall days could increase significantly in the coming days. Flood-related stream flow is projected to rise in parts of the state, so the question is no longer, is climate change coming? The question here is that why aren't we preparing for it? Because climate change is already here. It's right here. So we are seeing extreme rainfall, destructive floods. We are seeing severe erosion everywhere. And we are seeing changing agricultural patterns. And this is, and across India, people are experiencing deadly heat waves and increasingly unpredictable weather everywhere. So yet climate change still doesn't receive the urgency it deserves in our political and administrative decision making. My question is why? Why? Why do our elected representatives remain largely silent on this? Why aren't the central and state governments making climate resilience a core development priority? And why are we building roads, bridges, irrigation projects and other infrastructure without asking one simple basic question? That is, will this infrastructure still be safe in the climate of the next 20, 30 or 50 years? Because we don't need another report telling us that Assam is vulnerable. We have seen that enough. We already know it. We don't need another committee after every major flood planning things. We need implementation. We need stronger early warning systems. Scientific river and catchment management is very, very important right now. Strict monitoring of environmentally destructive mining is very important. Protection of forests and wetlands, climate resilient infrastructure, and at the end, better coordination between the states of the Northeast is very, very important. And I think most importantly, a very serious long-term climate adaptation strategy is very, very important right now for the entire region. Because this isn't about blaming one government, one party or one department. It's about accountability for all of us. It's a collective accountability, a collective responsibility. A government's responsibility doesn't begin when flood water enters someone's home. It begins years and years before that. So when a mining permission is granted somewhere, when a forest is being cleared somewhere, or when a project is being approved somewhere, or when a climate warning is issued, and when that warning is ignored, if our scientists tell us extreme rainfall will increase, we prepare before the rain comes. That should be our thing. And if our data tells us river flows and sediment loads will increase, we should plan accordingly. That should be the way it should work. And if our assessments are telling us, or it's telling a district that it is highly vulnerable, we all should act before vulnerability becomes strategy. So the people of Assam and the Northeast are not asking for sympathy after every flood year after year. They are asking for preparedness before the flood arrives. They are asking for clear answers. They are asking why governments have the data, the warnings, the projections, but still it appears to be unprepared every single time the disaster strikes. Why? And that is why we need to move beyond political blame and symbolic announcements. I think it's high time. The science has spoken time and again, and the ground reality is speaking even louder. So what we need now is political will, not silence, and not another report from any of these committees, not another post-disaster promise. I think we all need is simply action, because the next flood is not waiting for us, and neither is the next heat wave also. So if we know what is coming, then we should have a collective responsibility to prepare. And the question is no longer whether we can afford to act or not. The question is how much more are we willing to lose before we do.